This is ILLUMENATE, the podcast about men with good hearts, open minds, and a desire to make the world better. Welcome to ILLUMENATE. I'm your host, Chris Tidrick, and I'm here with Micah Sam. Micah is the Director of Teaching, Learning, and Research Technologies at East Carolina University, where he helps bridge the gap between faculty, staff, researchers, and students in the technology and systems needed to support them. When not working, he can be found playing Minecraft with his daughter, walking in the woods with the dogs, or making fat beats on his laptop. Welcome to the show, Micah.
Hey, Chris, it's good to see you, man. I love that you pronounced the in fat beats. That's very nice.
Excellent. My son is a music producer, so I get the terminology. So really looking forward to this conversation today. You and I have known each other for a while now professionally. We're kind of in the same professional association. I've had a chance to hang out at some conferences.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've had some, I think, deeper than average conversations at those conferences.
In these little weird windows between events. Yeah, it's been nice, man.
Yeah. So I thought of you when, I was kind of going through my head on, who should I have on this show? And really looking forward to diving into some of these questions that I ask my guests. So if you're ready to go, let's have at it.
Let's hit it, man.
All right. Fantastic. So I start with motivation. So what's your why? Where do you find purpose and what drives you?
Yeah. And I'd say, historically, I'd be like, fear, anxiety, that thing pushes you forward. And I think, but in the more modern era, I think it is, finding the places in the world where I can connect with other people, right? When I really, this preparing for this has been great for me because it made me sit down and think about these things, right? And, where is the thing that I find motivation in life? It's connecting with other people. It's, in all honesty, it's seeing oftentimes suffering in other people and wanting to reach out to those people, having suffered myself in life and try to give them relief and grace and peace. Those are the things that kind of get me through the day. And regardless of what level I've been at in terms of, a director or a coordinator, whatever, there's always been some element of the job, right, where it's like, how do you reach out and help other people to find peace in the world, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I've been diving into this idea of sort of shared suffering as the true connective tissue of humanity. That gets right at this. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about your journey and sort of where you got there. You talked about maybe fear and anxiety being an early motivator and then getting to this place where you want to help people. So tell me about kind of the significant moments in your life that sort of led you to where you are today.
Yeah, and I'll go a little bit out. There's four that I sort of thought about in advance of this, and I'll go out of order because the last one's the hardest one for me to talk about.
Okay,
I'll go kind of middle, right? So about 10 years ago, I took a job. I used to be in oncology. I worked in oncology for about 15 years. And one of my jobs there, I used to work at the UNC Chapel Hill Lineberger Cancer Center. And one of the people that used to sit on one of our scientific review committees was out here at East Carolina University. He saw me there, and he eventually became the executive director of the cancer system out here in Eastern North Carolina. And when he did that, he reached out to me. He said, "Hey, Micah, I've got a job." He basically, designed this job and said, "I want you to apply for it." And when someone reaches out to you like that, you say yes to that, right? And it's a huge opportunity. And so I got to Eastern North Carolina, and at some point in time, we had a conversation. He said, "Micah, you've been stagnating. I've been watching you stagnate in your career." And I was like, "Wow," he kind of takes you back. But, I was like, you're not wrong. And so he said, you need to get an advanced degree. You need to get an MBA. And I was like, "Oh, whatever, Dr. Service. I'm never fine. I'll get on it." And somewhere in this process, my wife got pregnant. And then Dr. Service said, have you gotten your MBA yet? And I was like, "No, Dr. Service." Is like, "You need to do that right now. You never will." Right. And so I was like, "Okay, fine." So I applied for the program, got in, started my MBA program. My daughter was born. The pandemic hit in 2020. So I'm dealing with a newborn baby. I'm working at the hospital pandemic in the MBA program. But I am so grateful for that person reaching into my life and sort of shaking me and waking me up and saying, "You've been asleep." And getting the MBA was actually a huge deal for me. And I was an English major, a creative writing minor, right? So that line does not go straight to MBA.
It does not. Yeah.
No. But it did something great for my life. It made me stop and take a look at things in a much more strategic way. It's like, well, life is not just tomorrow or next week. It's where do you want to be in 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And then So the next part, number two, would be the birth of my daughter. I mean, that is this thing that diametrically changed my view of the world. And it's one of those things that you could tell yourself about this before you have a kid and you wouldn't understand it, right? I could tell you, yeah, that's right. Yep. You hold your daughter, you see your son, right? You see them do these things, and all of a sudden your perspective is like, it's no longer about me at all anymore, right? It is 100% about you. And as a person who may have struggled in life to really make good choices for myself, it's a lot easier to make good choices for my daughter, if that makes any sense. Yeah, I'm more able to put her in a good place. So meeting my wife, it was like definitely got to be in the list there. If she ever watches this, she won't. But if she ever does, she obviously kind of shout out there. But she's a person who really made me earlier in my life before this happened to sort of stop and self-reflect. She's a person who she's a yoga instructor and is deep into yoga philosophy, and took me along on that journey quite a bit, where it's about self-study. It's about looking at what you do and the reasons why you do it, because, I think you can't make conscious decisions about what you're doing unless you reflect on why you're doing the things that you're doing. Sometimes you do that on the mat, and the idea is you take that off the mat, right? So that's not just in your practice when you're practicing meditation or things like that. It's in your everyday life when you're going through a situation where you stop. Yeah. And then the last one is the death of my father. When I was 24, I was in Brooklyn. I had moved to Brooklyn, sight unseen, to an apartment building at the dawn of the internet to work for my favorite record label. Huge opportunity. I was on my way I probably would still be living in Manhattan right now. I got a call from my mom, said, your dad's in the emergency room. He had been diagnosed with a disease called scleroderma, which is an incredibly rare autoimmune disease. It affects maybe 0.001% of the population. Those who have it, usually they just have sort of like bark-like lesions on their skin. And he was one of the folks who had it systemically. It got into his brain, his kidneys, his organs. And I came back, and there was this man who, I feared him. I feared my father, but I loved him too. And he had lost his mind. He was shackled to a bed, and I didn't sleep. I watched him disintegrate as a human being in front of my eyes, and it was awful. It was all the fears that you have as a child, that something bad is going to happen, but no, the monster's under the bed. Well, the monster was under the bed, right? And the monster came out of the bed and ripped its face off in front of you. And so, that taught me about suffering in a way that nothing had ever taught me about before. And I will say, after that, you talk about the things and your decisions that you make in life. This is my response to that, which was, when that's going to my dad, like, there was no help at all. I mean, I slept 15 minutes at a time for maybe like 3 months. We had no help at the house. When it was done, about 6 months later, I decided to volunteer for hospice, right? I went and I sat with people who were dying, because I knew what it was like to not have a lunch break or walk outside and look at a tree. And I wanted to be able to give back to people who were experiencing that. And so I think for me, awful experience, but it opened up my heart to other people who might be also experiencing such pain.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's, I know that, probably not the easiest thing to share on a regular basis. So, it's, you talk about your dad, and you talk about fearing your dad, and, I think it intersects somewhat with this concept I talk about on this podcast a lot. Is this podcast or the topic about, what it means to be a healthy man in today's world, and like how we interact with our, with our fathers, with our children, with our, with the community at large, with the world at large. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of controversy right now about what it really means to be a healthy man in today's world. So for you, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading something earlier today amongst that apparently it was not millennials, it was the Gen Z people, men, that there's this sort of resurgence of misogyny in a way that is not.
I saw that too.
And it just broke me a little bit inside. I was like, I thought we were headed away from this, but then I turn on, certain news, and you're like, oh no, it's still prominent, ever present, omnipresent. So I think being a healthy man in today's world is, I think about that in two ways. One is, being a healthy person, right? What's being a healthy person? Right? And I think that's being in balance with yourself, right? And that, I think, opens the door to the fact that everyone's a little different, and there's probably nuances to that, right? There's not a one size fits all thing. So I think being in balance with your true nature is probably the biggest thing. Now, I think being a man in today's society and being that thing can be really challenging. I think about the way that I was raised, and it was very much I think about your parents are your first gods that you worship at their feet and you idolize and you. That's a
great way of saying that. Like, I hadn't really thought of it through that frame before, and it's very true. It's like it is. You get everything from them for several years at the beginning. Yeah,
that's right. And those formative years when they are your universe. And I look at my daughter now, and she looks at me, and I'm like, to her, Daddy knows everything, right? And I'm like, I'm always like, Daddy doesn't know anything. Daddy really does a very very small amount. But I think you look at your father, and you're like, that guy was like strict and pushed his emotions, did all the sort of traditional man things you did to be a strong man, and it killed him. I'll be honest with you. I would look at him at the end of his life, and I'm like, why did you look like this? And he looked like this because he just pushed it all down. He never allowed himself to be vulnerable or to feel. And so I've seen firsthand what happens when you don't do those things. And so I maybe have gratitude for this, right? Like, if I hadn't seen it in such an extreme way, I might not have been so willing to say, okay, well, F that, I don't want to use expletives on this, but like, F that. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the person who, feels what I feel and is tender and is open and vulnerable. And being that man in today's society in particular can be really challenging. And I think that's maybe talk to my daughter about this. Like, well, she talks about being afraid, and my wife and I talk about, well, fear is a prerequisite for bravery. You can't have one without the other. And so I try to look at it as an opportunity to be brave into society, to be the person that I authentically am and in balance with myself. But I think it's a hard thing to do. It can be a hard thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much pressure, like even today, to sort of conform to certain ways of being a man. It's that the article that you cited at the beginning about this study of Gen Z young men, that's incredibly disheartening to me. But it is a symptom that we're not doing a good job of helping them be. I loved how you said whole humans, right? To be a well-balanced human. It's not just, and that's the thing to me about being a man is being, allowing yourself to experience the human characteristics that mean something to you. It doesn't matter whether they're masculine or feminine. They're just human characteristics, right?
Yeah. And I think that being the willing to experience those things is the thing. It's like, it's almost like traditionally, and maybe in a modern society, the idea is that a man has to be almost like this, like a robotic expression of life, right? That it can't be too extreme one way or the other, and always has to say the right thing at the right time and be that's an unrealistic thing to live up to. It's not human either. It's something else,
Yeah. I talk a lot about deconstruction through the lens of growth, in this idea that we, in order to grow, there has to be loss of something, right? We don't grow without losing. And sometimes those things we have to lose in order to grow are things that we held really closely, like foundational concepts.
Yeah.
And so what are those things for you? Like that you've had to go, that doesn't work for me anymore. And that there was like pain in the leaving of it.
It's so funny you say. I am like actively going through this something with this right now with my own life. So I've been recently recognizing that there are these maladaptive strategies that have worked really well for me for a really long time, right? And some of those things are, being so afraid you're gonna be a failure that it pushes you on to action, right? Acting from that place of fear, acting from a place of anger. Anger is a powerful emotion that drives you forward into doing things, right? But either one of those things taken over an extended period of time is just damaging. It damages you. It damages the people around you. It damages your relationships. And it's unsustainable. And I've gotten to the point in my life where I recognize that those things that and it's paradoxical, right? Because on some level you're like, I need to let these things go. But the other part of your brain goes, well, they've worked so well so far. You've gotten to a place of like leadership, and so so there's this constant conversation in my head between like this thing that it's like, no, why would you let me go? And it's you grieve when those things are let go too, right? You're like, this is a part of me that sometimes I think about it as like sitting down and having tea with myself. And the person that comes up in my brain is usually like a 14-year-old version of myself who was like very twitchy and nervous and like, and I have to sit there with that person and say, it's okay. You don't have to hold on so tightly to this thing. And in that doing so, it means I'm letting that thing die. Right. Yeah. And there is grief associated with that. So I'm working through that right now. It's hard. It's been a hard journey, and I still rubber band back a lot of times. I'll get to a point where I'm like doing pretty good. I'm letting things go. I'm not letting those voices get to me. And then all of a sudden it's like, loud in your ear. Okay. Something intense happens at work or at home, and you're kind of right back there. And so, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to take however many decades of programming you had, especially during those formative years. Right. Yeah. And, rewire those pathways.
Yeah, it's when you were talking about your 14-year-old self. The first episode of season 2 on this show, I had some of my former guests come back and ask me anything with me. And one of the questions was what would you say to your teenage self, 14-year-old self? I can't remember exactly the age. Yeah. And my answer was, chill the fuck out. Like, and relax, right. Because there's so much anxiety at that age, and like, you're just, everything is changing for you. And you just, it's a really, really difficult time for boys. At 14, I don't know that you're really a young man at that point, but you're still very much a boy. And, but it's a really hard time in life. And
I think about that being like this weird interstitial liminal place where you're no longer a child, but you're not a man. You're this weird thing that's in between these two things. And gosh, those transitional periods are so hard.
Yeah. That's why they call them growing pains, right?
That's right. They're very painful too. Yeah.
So at the start, you talked about when you're talking about your purpose, you talked about connecting with people, and the community, I find, is a topic that it really varies in how men experience community and whether they have community. And I'm kind of a believer that men without community are the lost souls. Like they're the ones that struggle the most in the world that don't have community, but it seems very important to you. And so where do you find community? Where do you create community?
Yeah, this is going to be, okay. So I think the answer is everywhere and nowhere. Okay. And this is the honest answer. So the everywhere is like, I don't care who you are. I will talk to you, right? If you're the person that is bagging groceries, I'm going to try to find a way to connect with you. If you're the person who's walking by the hallway at work, I'm going to say, hey, what's going on? What's going on? Like, oh, well, I like the shirt you're wearing right there. What's going on with that? And so, and that comes from a very genuine place for me, right? I see people, and if I'm not overwhelmed with anger and fear and all this sort of things, I really want to know what's going on with other people. And I feel like that's where you start to build those connections. And I think that for me, it's been a couple of different things. It's been a self-protective mechanism when I was a kid, when I was younger. It's like, and just being, very honest here, growing up as a minority and the environment that I was in was not the easiest thing to do. I was, in high school, I'm half Asian, I'm half Chinese, I'm half Polish. And there was one other guy in high school, Adam, who was also half Asian. And together we comprised the one Asian person at the school. We put the 2.5s together. And so from an early age, it was a survival mechanism to get through the social things in life, which is to sort of know how to be friends with everybody. Right. That's kind of how and then the question is, for me is always, okay, well, what's the good part of that? The good part of that is learning how to connect with people. The bad part of that is if you're doing that explicitly as a planned thing to keep yourself safe or to, accelerate your career. And so for me, I've always been trying to self-monitor, okay, which one of those two things is it? So for me, that's how I've always created community, continue to do so. Now the nowhere part comes in that in so many ways, I feel like I'm not always genuinely open about myself and what's going on with me, right? Like I have all those other people that I feel,
you're a servant in the.
Yeah. You may, you nodded like you might know what that's like a little bit. Which means that, when I stop and go, I know a lot about so many people, right? I could tell you very personal things about so many people because I think I do a pretty good job of creating an opening, inviting environment, much like you're doing right now. And people are willing to open up. But the question I have sometimes is, am I as open with other people? And in that sense, I feel very alone. I feel not that many people really know me and know who I am. And I mean, that's of my own doing, right? Like I am on some level willfully choosing to not be transparent and vulnerable.
If you don't mind me asking, are you working on that? Are you actively trying to sort of remedy that?
I am, and it's interesting. I actually had this moment at work the other day where I was in a meeting with my team, and some things that happen. I start every single meeting, my team meetings with go around the room and asking everybody to tell me what they're grateful for. That's the first thing I do. And I can tell you about why I do that at some point in time if you like. But I've found it to be a very effective exercise for many reasons. One is that it turns people's minds towards gratitude, right? You start at anything and you go, well, what am I thankful for? It helps you to be, focused towards the good. It's also a sneaky way of seeing where people are at in their lives, right? You're like, if someone's like, oh, I'm just glad that I woke up this morning, like, oh yeah, Bob really needs that little extra care today.
Yeah.
I was in this meeting and I got to me and I was like, I'm sorry, y'all. I don't have anything to be grateful for today. I'm having a really tough day today. And I went and it felt really uncomfortable, right? I felt really bad. And I went to bed that night and I thought, oh, did I do something wrong? Had I hurt the morale of the team? And I came back in the next day and I talked to two people about this. And they said, no, we're just readjusting to someone who actually is willing to be vulnerable to us.
Yeah.
We really, I was like, oh,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, thank God. Like, okay, I did this thing and it felt like I should do it at the time and be that real human being. But that's like I said, super hard for me. But people, they were like, thank you for that. It's like something we haven't had in our, 20 years of being in IT or whatever. That's just not what we're used to when we're recalibrating.
Yeah, it's in my experience, and this came to me pretty late in my leadership career. It's vulnerability is the secret sauce of leadership. It really is, because it creates that ability for people to go, okay, it's okay to not be okay. When the leader is saying it's okay to not be okay. Now, that doesn't mean you get to be a hot mess every day, right?
Yeah, right.
That creates chaos too. But when you don't show any of that as a leader, it doesn't let people breathe and be vulnerable themselves. Like, so it's this two-way street. Instead of just being there, like, it sounds like you're somebody who was there for anybody who needed you. You're there, right? Yeah. But when they see, oh, you know what, Micah is struggling with this stuff too, we're okay, right? That goes back to that shared suffering. Like, shared suffering is the greatest connector on earth. So thanks for sharing that kind of vulnerability, because it's really hard. Like when you're sitting at the top of a group or an organization, it's really, really hard to sort of take that first step in there. But once you realize what it can do for an organization, like, oh, okay, there's a use for this. There's a usefulness in this.
It's been interesting. It's been hard for me a little bit in this transition to this new role, is that there's a culture that's not like that I'm walking into, right? And so all the external pressure suggests that I should not act that way, even if though my gut feels like it's the right thing to do. It's interesting to navigate that. And
you see people too come into your organization, at least I have, where they're not used to an organization like that. And they're waiting for the shoe to drop. They're waiting to be punished for expressing weakness. And all I want to do is somebody will come to me and you can just see there's like this, they have their shoulders hunched and they're like sheepish, and they're just waiting for me to get upset with them telling me that they're struggling with something. I'm like, no, that's not how we operate here. Like, that's not how it works. But I'm like, where did you come from that this was unacceptable.
Yeah, that makes me think, and it makes me think like how far back does it trace? Like where in your life? Like I almost like look on personal life. I'm like, oh, when you were a kid, like probably something happened, and you were like you learned that this is the way to. And that actually makes. I'm going to tangent here for a second. It makes me think about the fact that more often than not, we put ourselves in positions to replay the patterns that existed in our early lives, right? And so, people end up where, whether they realize it or not, they have put themselves in some ways.
Yeah, I had one employee who every single time they would be acting like they expected the rug to be pulled out from underneath them in every single situation. Yeah. And all I could think of is what happened to you at some point that caused this like reaction to things. So, we all bring that stuff in. And when we don't acknowledge the fact that we bring that stuff in the room, you're just asking for people to not feel safe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Absolutely.
Okay. So we're at the point in the conversation that I call the slow rolling thunder round. And if we had been recording this last night, I'm in Central Illinois. We had some pretty bumpy weather last night. I might have had the slow rolling thunder sound effects over the mic, but tonight we're just dealing with snow tonight. It's been an interesting spring. But what this is instead of a lightning round, it's a slow rolling thunder round. We're gonna dive into 12 questions. All right. They intended to be relatively short answers, but more often than not, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So, the first question: what are your top 3 values?
Okay, I may prepare for this one. Let's see. They are curiosity is number 1. Empathy is number 2, and equanimity is number 3. And if I don't mind, can I explain that a little bit?
Absolutely, because I think there's going to be a lot of people listening to this podcast that go, what did he just say for number 3? So dive into that a little bit.
Okay, sounds good. So curiosity is critical because it's the avenue for you to discover new things, to make connections with people. If you walk by somebody, you're like, oh, what's going on with that person? That's how you connect with them. Or you go, this thing didn't work. I wonder why it didn't work. That's how you figure out solutions. Or I want to do this thing. Well, how do I do that? So empathy is where that human connection comes in. Everything we've been talking about, right? It's like seeing another human being. And it's not that you just observe you don't go robot, facial expression, eyes, tearing. That must be, you actually have to experience the emotion another person is experiencing. I think that's when it's genuine. And that's the hard thing, right? Is looking at someone who is suffering and crying in front of you and being willing to go there with them, right? And I've had this happen, even the last month, I've had this happen 2 times where someone came into my office and they started to cry. And I allowed myself to be and go sobbing. Like I didn't go all hot mess, right? But I let myself be emotional. And when you do that, I think people, they know the truth of that experience. But equanimity, which is equanimity is that where the balancing part comes into that, right? Because if you fully give yourself over to pure emotion at all points in time, you can't make wise decisions. And having ability to take a look at a situation, even one that might inflame you in an emotional way, and try to find peace in that situation to make wise choices is a critical facet. And I think if you don't have all those 3 together, then you're going to be missing something really.
Yeah, those are fantastic. Yeah, you're gonna get the award for the biggest 25-cent word on the values. So fantastic.
It's all 2 cents from here on out. So
okay. What's your favorite emotion?
I think amusement, right? I think and there's a little bit of a nuance there. It's like I feel like it's not just finding like something riotously funny, but when I'm able to sit back and just be like, that's pretty funny. Like that sort of feeling is my favorite sort of feeling, because that can, in the best case scenario, that can pop up even in the worst situation where you're like, actually, it's kind of funny. You can find that little bit of humor in something which is awful, then I think you're doing pretty good.
Do you tend to find that like all day long?
No, I don't find it hardly at all. So when it happens, I'm very appreciative.
Okay.
Yeah. It depends on where I am. I think when I'm able to be in balance with myself, right, to go back to the beginning, when I am in balance with myself and doing all the things I need to do to be that person, it's much easier to find that, right? It's much easier to remember the truth that life is pretty effing funny if you stop to look around and recognize the truth.
Yeah. What's your least favorite emotion?
It's probably fear, right? And it's probably because I found myself governed by it for so much of my life and I know what it brings, that I don't like it very much. And I am grateful to it for certain things, but I don't like it very much.
What was your turning point with fear?
Turning point in what sense?
In the sense of like, it doesn't feel like you are governed by it anymore.
Well, why don't you ask me that in 20 years from now? No, I think it was, that's a really good question. I think I will say my wife coming into my life and truly helping me work through self-study and go, why do you do the things that you do? And I mean, this is not a quick process. This was like, my wife and I have been together for 20 years now. So this is 10 years of her grinding on me and finally being like, yeah, it's this thing. And then another 10 years of her being like, you need to feel it. You need to feel this thing that you're pushing away. And if you feel it and taste it and let it into you, you'll recognize that it dissipates and goes away, and then it no longer controls you. So it wasn't like a moment. It was a series of moments. And it's something that's still an everyday process for me to work on. But I'm so much further along now than I've ever been in my life, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. That description reminded me of a book that I read years ago called it's Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul. And he talks about emotions being something outside of you. Like if you can see it, then it's not you. And at that point you can let it pass through you. Instead of letting it lodge inside you. And it's like that really changed the way I approached emotion. To like not be afraid of it, but to be able to manage it better. So great book. One of my favorites, really impactful. Where can you feel the most yourself?
So I think it's when, I'll tell you where I feel the most not myself. All right. I feel the most not myself when I'm sitting and thinking about myself. When I'm sitting and I'm going like, oh, what did I do? How did I do this? The time I feel most myself is when I'm like actively working with somebody else and trying to help to serve them, right? Because there's no ego or thought at all there, right? I'm not thinking about me at all. I'm just acting from what I believe is my best nature. And I think that's where I feel the most me.
So you have flow.
Flow.
Yeah. That's a really deep answer. Most people have answered that question on this podcast. It's more of an experience of themselves rather than others, and you find yourself in others. That's really interesting. What's one way you try to make the world a better place for others?
I think it's that, it's like curiosity, like looking and recognizing, right? I think, it's like something that you can do no matter where you are. It's like if you look out at the world, seeing where someone else is experiencing, I usually go for suffering, right? Because that's the thing I'm most intimately familiar with, but it can be joy too. Going to the world and recognizing people where they are, I guess, is the honest answer to that.
What do you want other men to see in you?
That it's okay to be who you are, that you don't have to be anything else, right? That you can be just who you are, and that is 100% enough.
What makes you most proud of yourself?
That's a hard one, Chris. I think I look at my daughter, and again, I'll circle back. I did not have a good childhood, and I did not have a good father, and I waited to have a kid because I was so afraid that I would harm my child in the way that my father harmed me. And the fact that I have, with some small exceptions, completely avoided that sort of behavior with her is, I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah. It's when we have to like suffer through negative role modeling. Yeah. Right. When we, I've had bosses like that where, I go, okay, what do I need to do in this situation? I'm going to do the exact opposite of what they did. Right. And sometimes that's all the universe gives us is that ability. That's right. But the realization you had of this is not the way to do it. And not just repeating the mistakes. That's pretty amazing. What's your greatest opportunity for growth or improvement?
I think for me, it's probably, and I think I'm getting closer to this, right? The realization. Okay, so there was this time. I'll tell you a story. Is that cool?
Okay. Yeah.
There was this tiger that was in this. It was kept in this cage. It was like a 10 by 10 cage, and every day the tiger would stalk the perimeter of this cage. Every day, just walk around the rectangle. And after 10 years, the tiger was rescued and was moved to this palatial zoo where it had this huge enclosure. It had all these trees. It had a river it could go to and drink water. And every day, it walked in a rectangle, the 10 by 10 rectangle.
Oh.
I am getting closer to recognizing that I don't have to walk in the rectangle anymore. And that's my biggest opportunity for growth.
Man, you just hit me in the feels. Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow. No, that was really powerful. I love that story. I think every single person listening to this will understand that. So, yeah. Okay. Recompose myself here. Where do you feel the most vulnerable?
This has been pretty vulnerable. I feel the most vulnerable when I'm talking about myself, and I don't do it very often. I mean, I will with my wife would disagree. She'd be like, "You talk about yourself all the time, Micah. You need to shut up." But outside the confines of that, I am not a person that talks about what's going on in my life or inside of me. I think as vulnerable as I am, I don't talk about me a lot, and so yeah, it's pretty vulnerable for me, man.
Well, I'm glad you decided to come on. Like this is.
I'm glad you invited me.
Yeah. There's no courage without fear.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah. What's the hardest thing about being you in today's world?
Yeah, I think that there are so many cultural and societal signals. I had a therapist once tell me, you can't be immune to all of society's signals. And the fact that she used the word immune, I found to be fascinating. Like you're going to be infected by it in some sort of way, right? And I feel like there's so many of the things that I believe and feel to be true. And to be clear, I mean, I believe it. For me, I think it's true. I mean, I could be wrong, right? But a lot of things that I believe are in opposition to some of the signals that society sends out to me, to men, to people in the world right now. And that makes it challenging to walk through the world every day. And everywhere you look, there's something that's saying, no, you're wrong about that. You should be more A, more B, more C. You should be cold and calculating and mean, and, all these things. And yeah, that's hard. That can be hard.
Yeah. What's one coping mechanism that you have for that? Because I think a lot of people are feeling that right now, that there's just all this stuff that just keeps hitting us.
Yeah, I think selectively, it's like decision making. You selectively decide, I don't want to engage with this, right? My wife took social media off of her phone, and I'm not there yet, right? Like I'm still a doom scroller, but like I can at least curate my feed. So when I see things that I know make me feel awful inside, I can say, you know what? I don't need to see that. And I think I saw one of the I think she was a skier. Someone asked her, they said, every time you give an answer to a question, you seem so incredibly well thought out. You talk about aeronautics, you talk about how do you do that? And she said, well, I study myself. I write down everything. I write journal all the time. I process everything that I think, because you can control what you think. You can decide how you want your brain to operate and what you think, which means you can choose who you want to be. And I was like, first of all, blew my mind. And secondly, how old are you? And you like, I figured this shit out. Like, nice good work from you.
Yeah.
But that's it, right? I mean, you can choose how you want your brain to be. You can choose what you think. It's just that it takes a lot of effort to stop in the moment and look at what you're doing and go, do I want to do this thing or do I not want to do this thing? And yeah. It's available, but hard. And
unfortunately, too many of us just sit in consumption mode and don't realize we can be in production.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So as we walk through this conversation today, what's the thing that surprised you the most? Maybe something that I asked, maybe something that you shared that you weren't sure you were going to share, some realization that you had about yourself as you were going through. Like, what surprised you?
I'll be honest with you. I surprised at how comfortable. I mean, I told you this was hard for me, like that I was to be vulnerable. But I expected to come in here and be really to feel a lot of fear. Honestly, to feel like I couldn't answer these questions, and I'm honestly a little surprised that I felt as comfortable as I did talking to you. And I think that's a testament to you as an interviewer, man. So props to you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, there's not been an ounce of fear in your voice today. Like,
okay.
I'm like, this is a cool cat, man. So, yeah, as Eddie Francis, one of my earlier guests, would say, he'd said he'd call you a cool cat. So,
I'll take it, man.
Yeah. So, one last question as we wrap up today. What advice do you have for men who are struggling to find their place in a rapidly changing society?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay to be you, man. It's totally fine. Like whatever you're going through, you're where you need to be right now. You don't need to overthink it. You don't need to worry about it. Just be who you are. And if people don't like that, they can, you know what? That's what I'd say.
Fantastic. Micah, thank you so much for this conversation. This is great. Like I kind of knew you. I mean, we've known each other for a while. I feel like I know you so much more deeply now, and hearing some of your stories and sort of, how you process the world. It's been a great conversation. Really appreciate it. I have a feeling that everyone that watches or listens to this is really going to get a lot out of this conversation. So thanks so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. It's truly an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You can learn more about Illuminate at illuminate.substack.com. We are also streaming on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you at the next episode of Illuminate.